Hello and welcome to the President's Podcast right here on the record with the Ohio Senate. The views the news excludes. I'm John Fortney, the Director of Communication with the Senate Republican Caucus. That's the Senate Majority Caucus here in the Ohio General Assembly. It is great to have on the program a national face, somebody you've probably seen on national TV networks. Mehek Cooke is a Fox News Network political commentator and news analyst with Ohio ties. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so long, John.
It has been a long time. It has probably been in person, I don't know, 5-7 years. But I see you all the time. We see you all the time on Fox Network, Fox Business, and you have a real political background linked to Ohio. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have to say, born in India, made in Ohio. Ohio for me is always going to be home. As you know, I'm an attorney by background, have a small business, ran for office in 2020, took out Franklin County. That blue wave came in crashing. And I think the legislature, though, has rebounded from that a lot in 2020. And we're seeing a tide that is continuing to show conservatives are going to lead the path in Ohio. So I've been doing a lot of national media commentary, and even right here locally, NBC and 610 radio. I think it's important to elevate conservative voices and what we think, even when people don't agree with us.
Well, that's the beauty about debate, and we'll also get into, where debate has gone off the rails. And I know you knew Charlie Kirk as well, and we'll get to that in a moment. But you talk a lot about some of the big national and worldwide headlines. And so isn't it amazing that after the mandate in November, we now have a president who seems to understand what the path to peace is in the Middle East with the Gaza Peace Deal, the release of the hostages, and even some of the Democrats had to reluctantly say, yeah, this is kind of a big deal. How big of a deal was that? I mean, I know that was certainly on your radar.
It was, and John, I spent about 8 days in Israel. I was steps away from the Gaza Strip as I witnessed bombings. I was in a bomb shelter one night because Israel was being attacked. I mean, for the people in Israel, the one word that I can tell you is resilience. Their love for their country and their people, and their love for Palestine, not Hamas. You have a terrorist organization in the Middle East that was running the show because Joe Biden was a shill of a president. He turned his back on America because Israel's strength is American strength and vice versa. So we continue to allow and empower Hamas through Joe Biden. And what President Trump did was he promised peace in the Middle East. It is the most historic peace deal by a leader who was relentless. He made sure he continued to work with the prime minister. He continued to reach out to push for the hostage release and return. I mean, this is the biggest success story, in my opinion, under the Trump administration.
It's interesting because when we, and we'll get to this as well, but when we see the protests happening, not only around the country, but specifically on college campuses, there's an organization called Students for Justice for Palestine and all the Free Palestine protests out there. I'm like, what are you talking about? Then if you want to free Palestine, you have to go to Hamas.
Correct.
I mean, there's a big difference there.
Correct.
It was Hamas, the terrorists that attacked on October 7th, right, at that concert 2 years ago.
I went to the concert site and it was horrific, John. You saw person after person that was 20s, 30s, thinking that they were going to a music festival to be completely annihilated by Hamas. I mean, horrific. You hear the phone calls. I mean, this is all documented to see what Hamas did there. They're a terrorist organization and they feed on the fact that if they kill one Jewish person, they're going to make their way to God. I mean, that is how they're brought up, that is how they're bred, and that's what they're taught. We did free Palestine. President Trump did free Palestine. So all those protesters on campus need to just simmer down now and thank President Trump. Because Hamas is no longer going to be in control of that region, Palestinians get to raise their children. They get to afford food. They get to figure out how to make a living today, and they're not under authoritarian control anymore. That's massive.
Oh, huge. And isn't it interesting, though? I mean, it seems like it was so begrudging, and some people they can't get over their TDS or their Trump derangement syndrome, that the level of rhetoric and name calling and calling everybody a fascist and calling people Hitler like Trump. I thought the Babylon Bee, if you know what the Babylon Bee is, it's on social media. It's a great satire, but they really drive home some relevant points. And this was the headline and cover on the Babylon Bee the other day. And the headline is, Hitler brings peace to Israel. And then the first line, in a stunning development that experts said could change the course of geopolitics for the foreseeable future, Hitler announced a historic agreement that would bring lasting peace to Israel. I mean, first of all, it's way out of bounds to be throwing around labels like Hitler and fascist on President Trump and Republicans who swept him into office, carrying the Electoral College and winning the popular vote in November.
Well, over 77 million Americans voted for President Trump. And the fact that these leftists and wokist activists that continue to call us Hitler, I just had a comment, somebody called me a Nazi. I don't think they really understand history. I don't think they're reading our historical books. And I don't know if they truly understand what the Jewish people went through under Hitler. So it is repulsive. And those are the people that are like less educated because they're not smart enough to realize what Hitler did versus what President Trump has done.
Yeah, I've said that they wouldn't understand fascism the difference between fascism and freedom if they were educated in a gulag. I mean, They truly don't understand how horrible that was throughout Europe.
Correct.
And the persecution and an attempt to annihilate the Jews. I mean, they don't get it, or they didn't learn it, or they learned it incorrectly from more of a woke narrative over the years.
Well, it's woke narrative. Plus, as much as we love social media, I think social media, you can be a keyboard warrior today. You can hide behind any kind of name out there and say the most heinous things. I mean, look at after Charlie Kirk's assassination, the types of vitriol that came out, and suddenly people weren't hiding anymore. I mean, you have Ted Berry in Hamilton County, a sitting judge that celebrated and mocked Charlie Kirk's assassination. You have a Democrat attorney general running against my friend Keith Faber, who thinks he should be the chief enforcement officer, making heinous comments about the death of Charlie Kirk. I mean, this is right here in Ohio. They have lost their moral compass, and this is why we're going to continue to build the base, because there's a rot in the Democrat Party, and they don't even realize it.
Well, people, after Charlie Kirk, and we'll talk about that, because you knew Charlie Kirk, correct?
I did. I was able to have the fortunate opportunity to go to many of the Turning Point events, and he was in Delaware County 2 weeks before he was assassinated.
Isn't it interesting that here's a guy, talk about courageous, being able to go into a sea of woke indoctrination, often called college campuses, which is one of the main reasons why we passed Senate Bill 1 in Ohio, the Advanced Higher Education Act. But go in and actually sit across or right across from the microphone of a student who has been indoctrinated in some way or a totally leftist view of the world and listen and calmly say, well, why would you think that? And then deconstruct their argument quickly. That takes courage to do that. And cancel culture has changed into almost a culture of we will cancel your life if we don't like that. But he was right that once people stop talking and stop debating, that's when the danger starts.
100%. And I think this is why it's so important to go to networks like, let's just say, a Newsmax or a Fox, where people will agree with me. But then I also go to ABC and CNN because I think it's important to have that honest discussion and disagreement. Otherwise, we're not advancing in life. We're not advancing ideas, policies, principles, and we're not changing the narrative today that's out there about who the Republican Party really is. It's us versus them. And it shouldn't be like that. John, there was a time when we could reach across the aisle and actually make a difference today. And today it's us versus them. And that's just where we are.
Yeah, and you wonder how we got there over the last decade. Speaking of, sort of the political environment, recently, after the murder of Charlie Kirk, all of the legislative leaders in Ohio, Senate President McCauley, Speaker Huffman, Senator Antonio, and Danny Isaacson, the House Minority Leader, they put out a joint statement, said, in a free and democratic society, there is absolutely no place for politically motivated violence, nor should anyone encourage or celebrate this type of heinous criminal behavior. As leaders from different sides of the aisle, we felt it was vital to join together to emphasize the significance of this message as we strongly condemn the assassinations of Charlie Kirk and Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark Hortman, earlier this year, simply for having a different opinion. But yet, this is the world in which we live, that we have to be constantly looking over our shoulder because some computer keyboard cowboy out there might try to cancel us on social media or incite others to do their dirty work.
100%. And I think part of this is also we have to be more of a offensive in terms of being on offense rather than defense. Safety and security is paramount. It's not something that we should be thinking about after an assassination. And if that was the change in course that we needed, it was after President Trump was almost assassinated. The fact that we have leaders going out today, we need to rely on law enforcement. The same law enforcement that Democrats have tried to cancel by defunding the police, that's happened and pushed for in so many places in Ohio. We have to back the blue. These are the same officers now that are protecting officials, that are protecting when I go and speak in a county. Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones. I mean, when I tell you I spoke at an outdoor vigil in Butler County, thank God for him, his team, and all the individuals that showed up for safety and security. Thank God for the people that continue to risk their lives for us. So as Democrats put out joint statements like this, I'd also like them to put out another statement in Ohio. We regret what we have done the last 5 to 10 years to the police, and we will back the blue. I mean, that's how you get to unity. If you don't back the people who are actually showing up for you, then these statements don't mean anything to me.
And speaking of law enforcement nationally, what's happening in D.C., what's happening in Chicago, what's happening in Portland, going after arresting, prosecuting, and deporting violent criminals, and yet the leftist leadership in these areas, states, D.C., Portland, California, for that matter. You know, it's all of those, the governors, the people in charge, the mayors are saying it's fascism. Look at what they're doing. You know, it's like World War II. No, it's not. People want law and order. And I thought it was very interesting that after the first couple of days of the National Guard coming into Washington, D.C., of all places, why would you think that there would even be a problem with, that there would be a problem with crime? People came into parks and thanked the guardsmen for being there. It's the first time we've been able to come here without feeling threatened for 2 years, was the message.
100%. Look, I had friends. I have one in particular who works at Fox News. His car was stolen. He was carjacked. I have another one who was threatened on her way to work. This was happening on the streets of D.C. President Trump created a blueprint that every single city should be calling for.
Let's talk about border security. 20 million estimated, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, over the last 4 years during the Biden administration, just crossing the border. And now it's basically down to zero. To me, if you put all the pieces of the puzzle together to where we are today, at one point, I would have been called a conspiracy theorist, maybe, 8 years ago. But it certainly seems like when you flood the country with illegal migrants, or violent criminals from all these other countries who shouldn't be here in the first place, it was a strategic attempt to undermine and unwind the fabric of the country and the constitutional principles on which the country was founded. Does that make sense to you?
It really does. And John, look, I visited the border the same number of times that Kamala Harris and AOC did photo ops. I talked to Border Patrol under Joe Biden, and they told me they were glorified babysitters. They processed people in. They hoped once the illegal came in, all they had to use was the word asylum. And I talked to the illegals sitting there and I said, what are you running from? It's not what they were running from. It's what they were running to. And it's the American dream. And there's a line for that. But then you get a court appearance. And most of these guys, women and men, they're not appearing after 3 to 4 years. Their address has changed over and over again. But Democrats were strategic. They opened the border so they could flood our states. And yes, they're in Ohio as well. They could flood our states to change the fabric so that illegals could vote. And it's happening. It happened in New York City. Many cities started passing ordinances, and sanctuary cities, which now are fighting President Trump. But you were giving illegals access to healthcare, education, driver's licenses, and they were voting. I mean, that's what Democrats tried to do, was undermine our Constitution, our rule of law, and who we are.
I couldn't believe the news on, I think it was Wednesday, I saw, where Tim Walz, who was the vice presidential candidate for Kamala Harris, signed a law that basically provided driver's licenses to migrants, illegal or otherwise, and with those licenses, you can go vote as a non-citizen in an election that's even federal. I mean, we banned that. I mean, isn't that already federal law? We've had many debates and passed legislation about protecting the integrity of Ohio elections here in the legislature and passing laws to shore that up, to make sure, as John Husted would say when he was Secretary of State and even today, and he would say, easy to vote, hard to cheat. But isn't it a federal law that you have to be a United States citizen, registered to vote in this country, to vote in a federal election or an election in general?
It is federal law, but each state has their own ability to pass state laws, and many states and many localities have been circumventing that. I think Frank LaRose was clearing voter rolls and kicking off dead people and making sure illegals weren't voting. And we saw hundreds of instances, even in the state of Ohio, where somebody was an illegal immigrant that was able to vote. We have to continue to secure our elections. It's something that I think a lot of people take for granted because it's federal law, but not all states are equal. Not all states are executing this the same way. I just shared with you, 6 days ago, New York was giving licenses, and guess what the name was? No name given. I mean, how do you give a state license to somebody when it says no name given?
That has to go to the United States Supreme Court at some point, I would think. Somebody would have to challenge that. I mean, otherwise, why even have any election laws whatsoever? Why not just have anarchy? I mean, if
but that's what Democrats are betting on. That's the only way they win elections, is when you allow illegals to vote for their outrageous policies that are in the hands of in the pockets of American taxpayers.
Well, I think it's also chilling when you have self-proclaimed Marxist or democratic socialist candidates like Mondani, that makes all the national news right now, running for mayor of New York and saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to tax, double the taxes on whatever the amount of income is. Well, say goodbye to all those business. I personally don't understand how somebody who says I'm a democratic socialist, or I'm a socialist, or I'm a Marxist, actually stands a chance of winning any election in America.
Well, I think if I've looked at some of the polling and statistics. When we had Mayor Bloomberg, there were a lot of individuals that stayed, and then Rudy Giuliani. But since then, there was a mass exodus. As you started watching Democrat policies, New York has no cash bail. So you get to commit a crime and it's a merry-go-round. You go in, you come right back out. You have instances of defund the police, which Mondani stands for. You have so many individuals that have left to other states, including Florida, and they talk about it today. I mean, Sean Hannity, I've been on with him, and he left New York and went straight to Florida. Why wouldn't you want to protect your families? Why would you stay in New York City if you know that you're not going to be protected? So you have a very extreme view and group. If Mondani gets elected, it's going to be a reckoning to show the American people that don't understand socialism what it really is. He's going to wreck New York, and President Trump will make sure that he cuts off all the funding, and he has the legal authority to do that.
It's amazing when you see Mayor Eric Adams, I think his first name is Eric, come out and look like he's the reasonable conservative when he was definitely a liberal, but he understands the danger of what's happening as well. It's one thing, too, and I've seen at least one instance of it here in Ohio. But when you talk about the so-called squad on Capitol Hill out of Minnesota, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, and the narrative is, I'm here to represent Somalia, or I'm here to represent the country from which my family immigrated from. No, You're here to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. At least I thought that that was the case.
It is. And I think that she should go back to Somalia if she wants to represent the people there. But she is doing a disservice to Somalians who actually, in Ohio, we have one of the largest populations. They want to assimilate. They want to do well for their families. When I practiced immigration law, I met so many that wanted to come to this country legally and do it correctly. She's a disservice to Somalians today across America. It's America first. And if she doesn't understand those principles, she should go back to where she came from.
Well, your family immigrated the right way, as you said, born in India, made in Ohio, or made in America, right?
Yes, we came over the right way. We filed our paperwork, and we got naturalized. And that process is grueling, and it's not easy. But I think that there are laws in the books so that immigrants deeply appreciate what we have. There's a gratitude that runs so deep because I know how hard it was to come here. And I've lived the American dream, 10 to 11 family members in the home. We lived with my grandfather. My dad worked 3 jobs straight for 7 years before we were able to afford a home. That's the American dream. It wasn't a handout. It was just faith and opportunities that got me to where I am today. But this is where the Democrat Party wants to continue handing things to others to say, come depend on us. And first they took the black vote for granted. And finally, the black vote turned against the Democrat Party. And today they're going to illegals and saying, we'll give you more handouts. Come vote for us.
And how offensive is that to immigrants that came in legally and did it the right way?
Deeply offensive. And I think when I look at the squad today, they don't represent the ideals of immigrants. They don't represent the ideas of women in the party. I think that they are honestly doing a disservice to the Democrat Party. I think if they had a reckoning in their party, they would be following the light there, which is John Fetterman. He actually is the most principled. He doesn't have to agree 100% with the Republican Party, but he understands right from wrong. And when you lose your moral compass, you're just lost. And that's what the squad is today, lost.
Well, yeah, he even came out this week and said, stop calling people fascists. Stop calling people Hitler.
They never learn.
And yeah, I mean, and it takes some courage to be the reasonable Democrat in the United States Senate on Capitol Hill because the government shut down, right? Who's responsible for the shutdown of the federal government right now?
The Shumer Shutdown?
The Schumer
Are you
shutdown.
asking me about the Schumer Shutdown? Well, I'll tell you something. I actually just wrote a piece for Fox and where I analyzed different shutdowns, John. So I looked at Clinton, I've looked at President Trump's previous shutdown, and all we did was it was like a shuffleboard. We'll give you this, you give us this. But we never moved the needle for the American people. This is the first time in history. It's unprecedented. President Trump is not only using this shutdown as a fiscal audit, he is cutting workers that are not constitutionally required to be there. So he's actually finally draining the swamp. He's balancing a budget. He's doing a fiscal audit like no other president in history has done. And I guarantee you he will be successful. And he's cutting funding from blue states, and I love it.
Well, I could not believe. I mean, listen, you know, I spent 25 years in broadcast news. I covered politics. I understand the political dynamic. And yes, I work as a director of communication for the Senate Republican caucus, the majority caucus. So you can say I'm biased. I say we stand by what we say here. I could not believe that Schumer came out and said every day the government remains closed is a good day for Democrats. I mean, well, just go ahead and hand the Republicans the football because they're going to take that in and score because he made it about himself, about scoring political points, about not doing what's right, about not keeping the government open with a continuing resolution that doesn't say anything. But they're standing for, and tell me if I'm wrong, spending billions of dollars on health care for people who aren't supposed to be here. They're illegal migrants.
Yes. So let me tell you, Schumer is so scared of his own shadow after he stopped a shutdown initially, and he's so scared of Soros in any kind of primary that he is pandering to this elitism rather than to the people he represents. And I've had a lot of pushback when I say that Democrats are trying to fund illegals. Yes, I know what the federal law says, but states have sanctuary cities and states pass their own laws to allow for this type of funding. And if you don't believe me, go look at Ro Khanna, go look at Maxine Waters, who have said on record, yes, we are funding some illegals. Well, what is some? Is it $1 million? Is it $500,000? Is it 200,000? It's still taxpayer dollars. And what I can't wrap my head around is when Democrats said yes to passing a continuing resolution 13 times under Joe Biden, why is this any different? Why can't we allow the government to operate so then we can figure out healthcare, which I believe is in crisis today because of Obama?
Oh, it's much more expensive.
100%.
Yeah. What was said during the initial debate of Obamacare years ago is coming true. Costs are climbing dramatically.
And guess what? You can't keep your doctor. That's the promise they made to us.
That's
you
right.
cannot keep your doctor. You are now doctor shopping because you can't afford anything. So where Democrats are right, we have an issue with healthcare, but Republicans agree. Open up the government and let's figure out healthcare next.
Absolutely.
Let's call it Trump care. I guarantee you'll be able to keep your doctor.
That's right. I forgot. That was the campaign
I'll never
line.
forget it.
That was the narrative.
Yeah.
And keep your doctor. I remember that. And so now maybe you don't have a doctor anymore because they can't afford to
Correct.
be in business, right? Big indictment here recently. And I have to give a lot of credit when I see just the straight talk coming from the FBI director, the attorney general during these Senate hearings, these congressional hearings, who don't take any guff from anyone. I mean, they just bring the fire and they bring the facts. But it was very interesting during the last 4 years when we heard so much about the weaponization of government. And now they're complaining about it because now Jim Comey, the former FBI director, was indicted by a grand jury in a liberal judicial district, in a liberal court district. I mean, how has that sent shockwaves through Washington? Because what you see in the media, in the mainstream media, it's basically all, the same narrative. You don't really hear what's really going on. Do you think a message has been sent based on what had been going on to go after Trump over his 4 years from 16 to 20? Now has a message been sent about, listen, you are breaking the law. You had the Steele dossier, the fake Russian collusion, on and on and on.
You leaked information, you lied during official hearings. Look, I think the problem today with Democrats is that they continue to bend the rule of law. And I love the headlines that say Trump, political prosecution. Well, let me tell you something. A grand jury works like this. It's a jury of your peers, and jury of Comey's peers thought that it was fitting to indict him. That means there's evidence there, and we have the evidence because we've constantly heard the fact that he lied to Congress, and he had a second in command state that he lied because Comey directed leaking information that was classified. And on top of that, we're going to see another indictment. Are you watching Bolton, National Security?
Yes,
former National Security Advisor.
John
Again,
Bolton. Yeah.
John Bolton was holding classified information, notes, top security information that shouldn't be leaked to anybody. He said he didn't have it. This isn't your bedroom where you can just write notes about what you're doing during the day and tuck it away and hope that nobody's going to find it. You have to return state property, classified information. And I know Hillary Clinton got away with it. I know, we do know, right?
Sure.
But we can't treat the rule of law to apply to one and not the other. It's equal justice of law.
Yeah, that was part of the report. I remember during what the recommendation was that investigated her. But I think about, and I guess my question is, where did the media go off the rails? Was the media going off the rails 20 years ago? But here's what we learned, right, since 2020. We heard about the Steele dossier. We heard about Russian collusion. We heard COVID, came from some wet market. But we now know that COVID was developed in a lab with some of the funding coming from the federal government. And all we ever saw was, Dr. Fauci. We heard that the Hunter laptop wasn't real. And it's just mind-boggling about how the people were lied to, not only by their leaders, right, who were in charge at the time, but by the media, who definitely was colluding with that narrative. Either the media is too stupid to do their own research at that level, or they were in on it the whole time. What's your message about media out there.
John, there's one thing that the media has been after, and it's power. And the biggest threat to the media is President Trump, because you know what? He doesn't need them. He actually doesn't need mainstream media. All he has to do is pick up his cell phone and talk directly to the American people. And it doesn't matter what platform. We joined Truth Social, we joined X, we joined any platform that President Trump was on because we were done with mainstream media because they were controlling us. And they hate him for that. People have turned off mainstream media because President Trump has the power of a cell phone directly to my phone and anybody else in America, and that's why they hate him. So they've tried to cancel him, from Russiagate and the collusion to impeachments to the sham trial in New York. To anything that they've tried to do, it's always been about cancel. I mean, I was on ABC News the other day, and finally I had somebody say that they were celebrating President Trump's peace deal. But the media is being canceled by him, one network at a time, and they hate him for it.
Well, he makes it so open. He'll talk to them at any time, where he never saw Joe Biden rarely come out and talk to the media. Trump talks to them on Air Force One, but he's also not afraid, and he really coined the phrase fake news. You're fake news.
Right.
That's wrong. That's the wrong narrative, and you know it's wrong. And you're a bad person for reporting that. You should be a professional and do your own fact checking. And I love how he's taken it to the media as a former reporter who actually would try to, do we have this right? I'm not, and actually do your own work to provide objective content to your audience. And now, quite frankly, based on what has happened over the last 4 years, you and I, are the media now.
Right, because it's accessible. We can do our own research. We start trusting the individuals that are reporting, and you don't have to be behind a news desk. You could be anywhere in America as long as you have the research behind you. You can state the facts and credibility. People will follow you.
Absolutely. One thing that the media loves to continue to follow, and they love to characterize it as it's this grassroots effort out there of just citizens who just think that we're under authoritarianism now and fascism. And we've talked about this on this program, indivisible, and now the No Kings protest. The media loves to promote, they cover it, but it's really a promotion of where you can show up and protest against President Trump and, the Republicans on Capitol Hill. But they are bought and paid for by the same groups. We had Caitlin Sutherland on from Americans for Public Trust on the program. And we showed you, it's from the Open Society, it's George Soros, it's the Tides Foundation that also provided $2 million, of course, to last November's gerrymandering campaign that the voters rejected in Ohio. It's the 1630 Fund. And for somebody to say, oh, there is no Antifa. Well, for the last 2 years, they called themselves Antifa. They had their own flag. I mean, these aren't just people who are just going out to uphold their constitutional First Amendment right and say, we disagree with the government. We don't like this person. These people are bought and paid for, and in Portland, in D.C., in some of these other cities, they are anarchists. They are violent criminals.
They are domestic terrorists, and we need to pass a domestic terrorism law so that we can start putting them behind bars. And I love when people tell me that Portland is safe today. There are so many today with the power of the iPhone that can sit there and record and show us it is not safe. When you have an independent journalist, Nick Sorter, who goes out there and wants to stop the burning of an American flag, and suddenly he's being put behind bars and you're letting these anarchists run, that's what tells you that Portland is burning, Chicago, and so many of these other places where President Trump has said, I will protect the citizens. I will bring in the National Guard. And then I love J.B. Pritzker, who says, come get me. Like this is some playground fight. No, this is about a fundamental right, a civil right. We deserve safety. No more political games.
Yeah, it's so bizarre to hear Pritzker and the Newsom in California act like they're defending the public. I mean, they're either totally lying to themselves, operating in a bizarro, warped sense of reality, because there is not one reasonable person out there that thinks that would be okay.
Not one. And I think that Newsom, Pritzker, all these Democrats, this is this new wave of how do I act like Trump? Well, not when you're on the 20% of what Americans think. You need the 80%.
Right.
And if you want to use social media as a tool, then use it the correct way. Use it for a message that resonates, safety and security. Don't use social media to fight the president of the United States, because he's just going to cut your funding because you're not protecting the very citizens you actually swore an oath to protect. And I think that's what's shocking today. When I watch these governors act, they act like children, and eventually they will not be elected for anything, let alone dog catcher.
We like to call them the elitist, the entitled, and always
Yes.
offended here.
Yeah, absolutely. And their language is so foul that it makes my head spin. This isn't what we should be teaching our future generation of Democrats or Republicans. I don't care what you are today. There's a way to have civil discourse.
That's right. It does, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, whether you're a minority, a legal immigrant, people who love this country and are here for opportunity and are here for values and for raising their family and teaching their kids the right way and for opportunity, that other narrative makes no sense to them. I think it actually frightens them. That 20% actually frightens God-fearing, family value Americans who are really disturbed by the things in the video that they see on social media.
Well, Democrats did not learn anything through the previous election, and I think the midterms will be a reckoning on them. Until they don't turn their policy goals, ideas, and the way they speak to the public, they're going to continue losing. And like I said, the light for them, it's John Fetterman. If they follow John Fetterman, they'd actually give us somewhat of a fight.
I mean, he's very reasonable. I mean, you know,
reasonable. He doesn't have to, he's not right. I'm just saying he's more reasonable than what we're seeing today.
Right. Imagine being labeled out of touch by just wanting safe neighborhoods, right? And not calling people names and labeling them. I mean, even Bill Maher, even Hollywood has like been red-pilled in many ways. Like, whoa, this was getting way out of hand, where even comedians were afraid to say something that might get them canceled 6 years down the road, right? Because that culture is so dangerous. And look no further than what's happening in the UK right now, where people expressing themselves as Christians are being prosecuted for creating anxiety in their town. I mean, I'm looking at this and thinking, is this sci-fi? Is this Escape from New York? Is this Escape from LA? I mean, is that what they're actually trying to bring to this country?
Yes, because it's all about power and control. I don't think they will win at the end of the day. And I think the only way for Americans to win on the right principles is to continue to spread our message, and for the president to continue to cut funding. And eventually sanity will come back, because right now I'm watching insanity. I go to New York every couple weeks and I walk around and wonder, how could anybody live here today? The cost of living is high, groceries are high, gas is high, it's not safe. I sit in the same room, watch the news, and then I go to the news and I come home. There's no part of me that wants to walk around in that kind of city. And you live in America today, and to say, I can't walk around in this city, I mean, that's insanity to me.
We like to say, based on the policies that we've passed in the state of Ohio, from tax reform, getting down to a flat tax, we want to have people understand that Ohio is a great place to live, work, and raise a family, and so should America. So, Mehek Cooke, Fox News political commentator at the network level. You'll see her all the time. Political analyst as well. Thanks so much for your time, perspective, and insight.
Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.